of film. So James Gunn just this week got fired for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And he got fired because he made some past transgressions. And by past, I mean like almost 10 years ago, if not longer. And
by transgressions, you mean making jokes on public media.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is he was a comedian. Now, granted, not a stand-up comedian, but like his works were comedic and he did have a certain edge to him. He originally started out doing trauma films. And probably his most famous film is Romeo and Juliet from the Trauma era. And, you know, he made Super, which had some really dark humor. And so Disney should have known what they were getting into when they hired him as a director.
He and his brother Sean Gunn, who has also been working on Guardians of the Galaxy, also did a series on YouTube called Safe for Work Porn. But that was totally fine to get him hired to do Disney-backed films. Like these Super Romeo and Juliet, these are all movies that are part of his public persona, part of his filmography. This is who he is. They knew what they were getting into. And if that stuff isn't, you know, too upsetting for the minds of child fans or whatever, I don't know why tweets from jokes that he made a decade ago are really relevant.
It was called PG
porn. PG porn, sorry.
But yeah, he got like actual porn stars to like be in it, but like it was kind of a jokey thing where it was all the scenarios that usually turn into porn in porn, but like they actually go the way that you would expect them in any other context. Like, you know, somebody has a plumbing problem, they call a plumber and the plumber comes and fixes the pipes and that's it.
Yeah, no double entendre about it. I mean, the tagline is really accurate. It's everything about porn except the sexual component.
Yeah.
But that was fine. That was Disney approved. That was A-okay. But when they found a tweet that he said he wanted to make a movie called Jerk Loose, a small town bans masturbation, and one high school boy jerks off in front of the school to show them how fun it is, that's a fireable offense. Because the big thing about the tweets, which a lot of people may not know, because most of the articles that are reporting about this are not including the actual tweets in question, but they're all framed as jokes. They're all like very obviously framed as jokes. Like one is it's a joke title of a Hardy Boys mystery. The tweet just says, "The Hardy Boys in the mystery of what it feels like when Uncle Bernie fists me." What is the problem here? It's like, I'm not saying it's funny. I'm not saying it's not offensive, but it's very obviously and clearly framed as a joke from somebody who does very dark adult style humor.
Yeah, and you know, I get that Disney is a really big family company. I mean, I was worried when they took on the Marvel Cinematic Universe because I thought they were going to put the kid gloves on, and for the most part, they have put the kid gloves on. Now, Thanos was a little bit more adult gloves, so to speak. And Guardians of the Galaxy had, you know, it pushed the boundaries a little bit with some of its jokes. But, you know, it was all in good fun. It was a PG-13 movie. There was nothing like beyond that. And James Gunn, as a director for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has not portrayed this person. And he has said that he was a much different person. And like, we all are different people. Like 10 years ago, I was a different person. I had different ideologies. I you know, I've changed a lot.
That's valid. But at the same time, I don't know why he's even making that excuse when, like, any of those tweets could easily be put into any given stand-up routine nowadays. Like, Bo Burnham just released his first feature film, and in his last piece of stand-up comedy, he made a joke about how, like, it's not fair that people put labels on you. Like, if I have sex with a kid, I'm a pedophile. But if the kid fucks me, then I'm a pedophile again. People weren't upset. People weren't saying boycott his movie. I mean, yeah, that movie isn't being financed by Disney, but he was not on the Disney payroll when these came out. He's not saying these things towards children or anything like that. But also, this is what they signed on for. This is who he is. He's not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, and so he made a response to this on Twitter, and he said, "Many people who have followed my career know when I started, I viewed myself as a provocateur, making movies and telling jokes that were outrageous and taboo. As I've discussed publicly many times, as I've developed as a person, so has my work and my humor. It's not to say I'm better, but I'm very, very different than I was a few years ago. Today, I try to root my work in love and connection, and less in anger. My days saying something just because it's shocking and trying to get a reaction are over. In the past, I've apologized for humor of mine that hurt people. I truly felt sorry, and I meant every word of my apologies. For the record, when I made these shocking jokes, I wasn't living them out. I know this is a weird statement to make. It seems obvious, but still, here I am saying it. Anyway, that's the completely honest truth. I used to make a lot of offensive jokes. I don't anymore. I don't blame my past self for this, but I like myself more, and I feel like a more full human being and creator today. Love to you all."
Why in the world would you fire that guy? He's like a freaking teddy bear. And he's always had a very positive attitude regarding Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, a big part of the reason why I'm surprised that they fired him specifically is because he's always been very public about saying, like, hey, I don't let bad reviews get to me. I don't let trolls on the internet get to me. I'm more concerned with making a good film. I'm not going to really sweat it over the box office. I mean, I do, but I'm going to try not to. He's always been very positive, trying to be like a decent person and a good role model, somebody aspirational in regards to his connection with Guardians of the Galaxy. Which is part of the reason why I don't understand why you would fire that guy. He's just like a teddy bear.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. It's really frustrating seeing where Disney is going, because Disney, like a lot of companies, are starting to adapt this, you know, politically minded viewpoint. We saw this with Star Wars, you know, partly with casting, which I thought was really great. You know, I thought that it was good to be a little bit more progressive with casting and all that kind of stuff. Now, with The Last Jedi, some of the comments that Disney has said, like people working and all that kind of stuff, you know, it goes against what I would see as positive fan culture. And I've always praised Marvel for not, you know, Disney's Marvel unit for not doubling down on that kind of stuff, you know, not emulating the whole Ghostbusters thing, which I think a lot of the controversy behind the Ghostbusters movie is the reason why the Ghostbusters movie failed. And, you know, with this Guardians of the Galaxy controversy that's been brought up, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is in jeopardy because...
let's face it. Why would you make Guardians of the Galaxy without James Gunn?
Now, some people have said that if you're going to replace James Gunn, the only person who could take, and
I don't agree with that. Nothing against Taika Waititi. He's a really funny, very talented director. I really like his work. Even before Thor Ragnarok, he's got some really great stuff. The thing is just that James Gunn did put a lot of himself into Guardians of the Galaxy, and it is very much his baby. And Taika Waititi just is not James Gunn. He's not a replacement for James Gunn. And it's not his baby. He didn't work on it the past 2 films.
Yeah, and there has been a petition that's been brought up. I think it was like 50,000 people signed the petition to get James Gunn back onto the project of Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
And if he's willing to take the job after being fired, he is a far better person than I am.
As somebody who wants to work in the film industry, this kind of stuff scares me because, I've said stuff online. I've been open and honest, and somewhat provocative in what I've said. Now, granted, I can stand up to everything that I've said, and I've never said anything to the extremes that James Gunn said, like where it could be seen as like, I don't usually use that type of sarcasm when I say things to insinuate that I'm a type of person that I'm not. Usually I'm mocking people or criticizing people, but I've done shit. Okay. Like, and most of us have done and said shit online. And the fact that you could lose your job over something you said 10 years ago, it's one thing to get fired for saying something right now. Like if James Gunn said that right now while working for Disney, I could understand Disney letting him go. But for him to be punished for something that he did a long time ago before he signed a contract with Disney seems really bad on Disney's behalf. This whole situation has really frustrated me because I have liked where the Marvel films are going, and I could see them possibly getting a little bit too politically correct with their stuff. And there's some insinuation with some of the stuff that's going on where they're trying to adapt some of the newer comics into the films. I've heard rumors that Ironheart might be coming in to replace Iron Man, and she was a notoriously not favored character in the Marvel universe. And unlike a character like Miles Morales seemed to only be put in there to have a woman of color.
Whereas Miles Morales is a different person than Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And a character in his own right.
Yeah.
My not favorite, I guess I should say, is Thorina, whose name is so ridiculous and stupid. Everyone just calls her female Thor because that's really the only purpose of her. That being said, I'm familiar with Thorina. I'm not at all familiar with Ironheart, so I don't have any opinion about that one way or another.
Yeah, and Brie Larson has said some stuff online that has been, kind of controversial, but if you're a woman, you can say pretty much anything, and when you're a guy, you can't.
And Jennifer Lawrence did the same thing when she was on Mother. Brie Larson's gonna be like, "Oh, male critics, you all need to step aside," and Jennifer Lawrence is like, "Hey, if you voted for Trump, don't see our movies." And it's like, dude, you can't dictate what people do or what people say. Jeez, it's not okay.
Yeah. And, you know, like, it's one of those things where, like, I understand where you're coming from in saying this, but, like, still, like, you're a white woman. Quit trying to, like, white knight for, like, people that aren't you. And, like, I understand, like, making those comments, but
Also, it was a bad choice to use A Wrinkle in Time as your example.
yeah, because A Wrinkle in Time, out of all the movies I've seen this year, I would say that A Wrinkle in Time is the absolute worst. And if you listen
More importantly, she's saying, oh, well, this movie isn't made for a 40-year-old white dude. It's made for teens.
I'm sorry, films are made for a universal audience. Like,
well,
films...
that's true, but also I saw the teens who were watching A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
They were not about it. I have never seen so many young people in a movie theater look so bored and so miserable out of any time I've ever been to a movie theater. I've never seen so many children look unhappy to be at the movies than I did when I saw Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, and the fact that DC is trying to hire her for the New Gods is pretty ridiculous. But yeah, it's one of those things where if this were a different time, I don't think this would have been that big of an issue. But I'm not sure, because Disney has, like, kind of doubled down on people, and there's always this sort of edginess that people who get out of Disney, like, they seem to, like, want to push the buttons, like, so far beyond. I mean, there's a joke. I mean, like, Miley Cyrus and, you know, all the people from the Mickey Mouse Club, like, you know, becoming complete provocateurs once they get out because, you know, hey, they're out of Disney. And, like, yeah, it's one of the reasons why you're never going to get an R-rated Disney Marvel movie. That's just not going to happen. I will say that, given the fact that Disney has now merged with Fox, I'm really scared that we're not going to get another movie like Logan, and possibly not even another Deadpool movie. And, you know, I get that, like, the MCU is, like, really popular and stuff right now, but, like, I kind of like those movies, and I don't want to see Deadpool neutered. And, you know, this sort of behavior that Disney is doing for firing James Gunn for doing some tweets is indicative of that very fear that I have, that they want to, you know, always perpetuate this family-friendly thing. Now, you know, I think that people personally and their films don't necessarily have to correlate. I mean, there are many filmmakers who I think, you know, have objectionable views that I don't necessarily agree with, but I would still fight for their right to make films. It's just really frustrating. So what do you guys think? What do you think about James Gunn getting fired? What do you think about the idea of getting fired for, you know, essentially what, you know, something that you did 10 years ago, something that you said, not even did, because, like, you know, there's a big difference between saying something and doing something. And, you know, I get that there has been sort of a conspiracy theory about, like, Disney and pedophilia and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I don't think that this is a conspiracy to cover up that. That's one thing that I will say. But I will say that doubling down on James Gunn, especially a guy who took a franchise that nobody was a real big fan of until the movies came out. Like, nobody knew Star-Lord. or Rocket Raccoon. I mean, yeah, you had some hardcore Marvel fans that knew about it, but most people did not know these characters before the movie came out.
Also, it is worth pointing out that as much as I do like Guardians of the Galaxy, most of what's in these movies is not even attempting to be accurate to the comics at all.
Yeah, it's very much its own thing, which, you know, everybody
sometimes
likes.
It's good and sometimes it's bad.
And given that that is the case, it's very possible that, you know, I know that at the end of Infinity War, Star-Lord was quote unquote killed. But given the fact that this has now happened, it's very possible that Star-Lord might not come back. That they might drop the film and just use that plot device to not bring him back. Which, I mean, that's really convenient. And, you know, it's possible that they might have known about these tweets beforehand. And like, we're just now finding out about it because, like, look at what happened with John Lasseter. How long did it take before we actually found out about that? Disney keeps things under wraps for very long. I mean, they are a huge company. They can do it. Not a lot of smaller companies can keep things under wraps like Disney did. And there might be some other stuff going on. And they're just using this as a cover for something else. They might want to take Guardians of the Galaxy in a different direction that James Gunn didn't agree with, and so they fired him because of that. Now, granted, they have enough control over the media to, you know, take something from his past and make the issue all about that when it could be about something else.
It is interesting, though, that you brought up John Lasseter, because I do kind of want to point out that, like, he wasn't even fired. He took a voluntary leave of absence and never came back.
Yeah, and now the director of Up is the CEO, which I think is really cool. But, like, you know, what John Lasseter did is not excusable, and it breaks my heart.
He was treated with more respect than James Gunn was. And to be fair, like, a big part of it is John Lasseter was part of the institution of Pixar. James Gunn did a couple side project movies. He's not like a part of the infrastructure of Disney.
Well, and
but
given
it's still really shitty that John Lasseter has been accused of doing actual harmful action towards people, and James Gunn is being publicly fired for making jokes.
Well, and I also think this is also Disney trying to double down after the Me Too movement, because many of you know that Harvey Weinstein originally started out working for Miramax, which was a subsect of Disney. Almost all the Quentin Tarantino movies were produced by Harvey Weinstein. Actually, I think all of them were. You know, he was a big proponent of Miramax before he split off with his brother for the Weinstein Company, which is now bankrupt because of transgressions that both of them were involved in. So I do think that the reaction to the Me Too movement is one of the reasons why James Gunn is getting the axe. But, you know, saying something and doing something, I think that there are different degrees. And if you don't address that, you are creating problems where there weren't problems before. And also, this is going to create a state of fear for a lot of directors. Like, I guarantee you that there are going to be a lot of people after this, a lot of directors, a lot of people in the media that are just going to get rid of their Twitter accounts, like, right away.
Actually, it is funny because it is kind of funny that you said that, because we do see a lot of public figures do that. And a lot of times, like, they'll come out and be like, oh, well, I did it because I'm being harassed a lot, or I just can't take it, or I don't want it anymore to be happy. But a lot of times public figures just delete it. and don't give an explanation or delete it and start over.
Yeah.
And it hadn't occurred to me before that that might just be because, like, now all of a sudden they're afraid of, like, what if they see a photo or a tweet or a joke or a conversation or what have you that I made, like, a year ago, 5 years ago, a decade ago, 15 years ago, whatever, and I lose everything I have.
Yeah, and it's a really scary thought that, you know, something as simple as a tasteless joke, which, you know, let's face it, the jokes that James Gunn made on Twitter were tasteless. You know, I will admit some of them I thought were kind of funny, but
I thought some of them were funny too.
But
humor's subjective.
Yeah.
If people were upset by it, I don't begrudge anyone from using their freedom of speech to say, hey, that's not cool. I don't have to agree with them, but that's fine. But I don't think that should affect his ability to make a movie.
And this gets into a weird subsect of free speech, because technically companies can control what people say. And, you know, the free speech isn't protected under that. Like, you know, you won't get arrested, but that doesn't mean that you won't get fired for what you say or what you've said in the past.
And sometimes that's necessary and sometimes that's abused.
Yeah, and in this case, I seriously think it's being abused. And I know that they've done a lot of change of management within Disney, and I don't want to say that this is like an SJW thing, because, you know, I don't have enough information to say that that is the case. Now, I will say that with Star Wars, there have been many people who have worked on Star Wars that have said things that, you know, fall in line with that extreme side of SJWs, where it's like, oh, hey, we're not going to talk about politics or whatever. Oh, wait, you know, blah, blah, blah. You guys are man babies living in your basement kind of thing. And it's like, you know, so I don't think it's appropriate to attack fans of something when fans have criticism towards a film, like, you know, with The Last Jedi and everything like that. You know, listen to the criticism. I get, you know, avoid the trolls and all that kind of stuff. But when people have legitimate complaints and, you know, bring that up, you know, listen to them. And, you know, with this case, you know, since there are a lot of people who are upset about it, I think you, as a company and as somebody as big as Disney, you know, you need to at least address this a little bit better than just having a firing with essentially no explanation other than, you know, his views and opinions and what he said do not reflect the opinions of Disney. It's like, no shit, they don't. Okay, so Gage on our chat says, I think he was rightfully fired since he wasn't really sorry about those tweets. If he would have denied them back then, if he was, he would have denied them back then, but he kept them up, which let this happen. That's my opinion. You know, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, he wasn't trying to hide anything. You know, like,
I mean, these tweets are from over a decade ago. Like, do you look through your Facebook posts over like the past year, the past 2 years, the past 5 years, and look at them and go like, oh, do I still believe everything I've ever said on public social media? Like, not really, but also, like, you're right, I don't believe he was really sorry about those tweets, but I don't think he should feel sorry for making jokes.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you know, the context of the jokes were tasteless, but
that was his style of humor. That was his public persona as a writer and a content creator. That is very much what his image was at the time. And
erasing that would not be true to, like, who he is as a person.
Yes, too. And also, in his defense, I don't think there's really a problem with, like, leaving up old stuff that you've done that you might not be proud of. Terry Crews recently went through, he did like a interview where he talked about all of the roles he's done in films, and he brought up when he was in the movie Friday After Next, which was Ice Cube directed it. It was like the prequel to the movie Friday, and in it there's a scene where his character rapes a pimp, and there is an element of like, rape's funny when it happens to dudes to it. And you know what? He completely owned up to it. He was totally honest. He was like, well, at the time, the concept we thought of was it was fine because it's justified because it's happening to a pimp. But we can look at it now and be like, hey, that's not really cool. I'm not ashamed that I did it at the time, but I'm glad that as a society, we can all look at that and be like, that's not cool. That's not funny. You know, it's important to have it there so we can look at it as a benchmark of like what not to do.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I think that this sort of thing is going to make people a lot more hush-hush in public. And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I think that because people are afraid of what they're saying, and because like the Me Too movement has created fears where people are afraid, perhaps too afraid of certain things. But like after this, I can understand why. I honestly think that because of this, we might see a new definition for the idea of a speakeasy, which is places where people can go and speak their mind and not be scrutinized for it and not lose their jobs for it. You know, this is just going
dangerous.
This is just going to make people go more and more underground with, you know, what they say. And, you know, I think this is not, you know, kind of like with the Me Too movement, this affects things more than just Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have
plenty
seen
of people, like real life, everyday people who get fired for stuff that happens on social media.
Yeah. And, you know, some of them, I think that, you know, rightfully so, like if you're like representing the company and then you have a picture of you like doing something unsanitary to food and that gets out on like Twitter or something like that. Yeah, of course you should lose your job. Or if you say something like racist and bigoted, you know, when you're working at the zoo, then yeah, I understand losing the job. But like,
well, like when a dude goes to a Trump rally and then loses his job working at a hot dog stand because he's a Trump supporter and that's literally the only reason why. It's not something he's saying at work. He's not bringing his job into it. He's not in his work uniform while he's expressing his political beliefs. That's not okay. Yeah. The reason why I say that's not okay is because if there was a woman who was at a pro-choice rally and she got fired for believing that a woman has a right to do what she wants with her body, I would think that that would be fucked up too. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and we're getting into this weird we're opening up this weird world where like freedom of speech isn't freedom of speech anymore. And we're really pushing the boundaries of that. And it's being attacked on by the right and the left and anywhere in the middle. You know, it's being attacked by companies, you know, with this kind of stuff. It's being attacked from the right because, you know, anything that's not Christian and, you know, blah, blah, blah is, you know, somewhat offensive and, you know, shouldn't be said and all that kind of stuff. And then you got the left where it's like, oh, anything that's racist or bigoted or, you know, like doesn't align with my views is wrong and shouldn't be said and people should be punished for it. And like, you know, I'm a strong advocate for freedom of speech, and I want people to say what they say and then be scrutinized for it, but not necessarily lose their jobs because they just speak their mind, you know, at one point, especially when what they did not reflect the company that they were working for at the fucking time.
Again, like this, his tweets from 10, 11, 12 years ago do not reflect the opinions of Disney. No shit. He wasn't being paid by Disney at the time. He didn't work for Disney at the time.
Yeah, and I really hope that James Gunn gets rehired onto this because this was his baby. You know, he made Guardians of the Galaxy what it is. And, you know, while the idea of Taika Waititi like doing a Guardians of the Galaxy film sounds nice, I think that James Gunn would do a better job with it. You know, it's his baby, and it's just really frustrating because I really like the work and I want to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but I don't want to see an attempt to be James Gunn if they can't get James Gunn, which is what it seems like they're going to do. And, you know, given some recent trends with Star Wars, I'm afraid that some of that, you know, far left, extreme left, I don't even know what to call it, but like this idea of like progressivism to the point where it's regressive is like something that I am really against. And it seems that they are trying so hard to course correct and be, you know, the most upstanding, like, you know, company and stuff like that, that they would do something like this, that they would, you know, get a guy fired for something that he said 10 or more years ago. So that was something. If you have anything that you think about this, let us know in the comments below. And thanks for listening.